The Motorcycle Safety Foundation is excited about the introduction of the SMARTrainer to the training community. We'd like to go over the capabilities and applications of the SMARTrainer to help you better apply it in your own training situation. Here we have the SMARTrainer. It simulates actual traffic situations on the screen that a motorcyclist would typically encounter. What's really unique about the SMARTrainer is the fact that it uses actual motorcycle controls. Let's take a look at how the SMARTrainer operates. Now, the first selection we make is to select the transmission type. There's, of course, manual transmission, but also automatic, because scooter riders need to be able to practice their search, evaluate, execute, all of their street strategies as well. Next, you'll notice that there are many different course selections or scenarios. Number one is, of course, practice areas. City, which will be very intense traffic and crazy things like taxi drivers are going to cut in front of us. Suburban or neighborhood setting, which will have more children, more bicycles, more families, and of course the bouncing ball that will be followed by a child. And touring or highway situations, and here we'll confront things like different surface types. And in fact, the lane change and the passing situations that we have on the highways. For each one of these traffic scenarios, there are going to be different routes. Now, the reason we have this is each route, of course, has different types of hazards it's going to confront the motorcyclist with. Let's take them into traffic and let's see how this works. We're going to choose the city scenario. Let's choose number 2. We'll choose daytime for now.
Take the bike out on the road.
The voice you hear
at intersections unless otherwise instructed.
Operates as the GPS system for the student rider.
Before moving on.
This voice will indicate when to turn right, when to turn left. Other than that, the student is on their own. In the typical student scenario, we would have the student wearing their noise suppression headsets. I have my rear view mirrors, I start my motorcycle, and I notice that coming up on my left, I've got a couple of cars. So I'm going to be playing it safe and waiting for those cars to pass. And now I'm pulling out into traffic. Another car pulls out in front of me. Well, that wasn't too bad. I had plenty of safety margin. So the student usually feels pretty confident early on in their first run. And they're riding along, and notice that a truck is merging, and this is one of those very typical crashes that happens with a new student just entering traffic. But in this case, the program picks me up, dusts me off, no lacerations, no broken bones,
turn right at the next traffic.
And the only thing that's bruised is my ego. So now I can restart the motorcycle after that instant replay, and I can move on with my ride. She's asked me to turn right at this intersection, so I've turned on my turn indicator and I execute my right turn. Now I've got a left turn at this intersection I'm approaching. Notice all of the different things happening in traffic, all of the things that I have to decide, what am I going to do with these things? Am I going to wait for this taxi, or am I going to go? I, of course, chose to wait, made my left turn.
Turn right at the next traffic
Now she wants me to turn right at this traffic light. Of course, this is a blind corner. If I take this blind corner too quickly, I may not be prepared for what's around the corner. Up, and another crash. Now, instead of going through the entire scenario, and all of the scenarios generally have 7 or 8 different hazards such as this, I'm just going to stop it right here and show you what the next thing would happen. Once the student has finished the scenario, this is what happens. Now they start an instant replay. At the end of each hazard situation, it's going to give me some feedback. And the feedback's pretty simple and clear here. I collided with a vehicle. Okay, once it's done going through all the hazards and giving that feedback, what's going to happen is we're going to get a report of my entire ride. So with this report, the student is given the option, and he prints out a hard copy, and he brings that to the rider coach. And the rider coach has a chance to do an initial debrief with the report, going over what has happened, what kind of route that he took. And the rider coach identifies a specific area of challenge for the student that he wants to go to and illustrate, perhaps, a specific principle. Once he goes there, he picks out a point of view, an angle that's best for the camera. In this case, it's about proximity. The student was approaching a stoplight, but he was being followed very closely by a truck, and perhaps the student didn't really notice that in his rearview mirror. Here, the coach is able to illustrate to him why this was a hazard and perhaps suggest an alternative approach to this for the student to, in fact, be able to avoid these kinds of hazards. This rider coach, having identified what the particular challenge is for this particular student, he's able to now take him back in after having coached him on it, and the rider coach identifies a specific scenario that contains the same type of hazard that addresses this challenge this student rider has, in this case, proximity to vehicles. He identifies the scenario, indicates that the student should once again put on the noise suppression headsets, and the student has an opportunity to once again ride completely alone, experience the hazards in this city, but this time see if he can employ the kinds of advice and suggestions that the rider coach gave him as he approaches the scenario. Now that you've seen the capabilities and applications of the SMARTrainer, it's time to put it to use and give your students yet another great training experience.